Welcome to Seed to Success, the podcast where we deep dive into the strategies, stories, and smart decisions that help VAs and OBMs grow and thrive. I'm your host, Adrienne Donnelly, and whether you're just starting out or looking for ways to take your business to the next level, you're in the right place. Now let's get into today's conversation. Hello and welcome. Today we are joined by a very special guest from the inner circle, Mariana from Pink Ocean Virtual Solutions. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Very excited to get into it.
Yes, I'm very excited. Today we're going to be really focusing on something that I know you are extremely passionate about, and I think is an area that even for really established VAs, we can always be learning more about, and that is the topic of the client journey. So to kick us off, what would you define as the client journey in the context of VA and OBM businesses?
So I would classify the client journey as basically the moment from where businesses, people, anyone hears from you to the moment that you ask them for their feedback from the services that you provided.
Okay, great. So from that very first inquiry, whether it's they meet you in person, they're referred to you, they find you on social media, all the way through the lifespan of that client being
Yeah,
part of
and
your.
beyond. Yeah, be a part of your ecosystem, I suppose. So
Mm.
yeah, from the moment they hear a whisper about your services to the moment you reach out to them in 3 years' time. How about if they want to, redo services with you?
Okay, great. And what do you see as those key important stages throughout the client journey? I think a few years ago when we ran our last VA conference here in Newcastle, where I'm based, Jane and I brought in a speaker to focus on the client journey, because I think something that VAs and OBMs do really well is client onboarding. And sometimes we confuse the term client onboarding and client journey or client experience. And it obviously goes so far beyond the client onboarding. And we had someone come in and speak about that whole journey of a client and not just doing the onboarding really well. So talk us through, in your opinion, what are those different kind of key stages of a typical client journey in the VA and OBM industry?
For VAs and OBMs, it would be when they first hear from you or an inquiry. So inquiry stage, again, client onboarding, which is like one of the most important ones. The service delivery, which is what people are paying you for. And then client offboarding, because you're not just saying, here's all my service, see you later, good luck with everything. You actually have to give them handover documents, how to use whatever programs you set up for them, or if they want to, let's say you're a VA and you're finishing our services with someone because they're moving on. Well, they need to know everything you've done, so that you need to give them a handover document with all your SOPs if you got them, basically everything you did, keep them updated with all the things that you did. And then after that will be review/testimonial request.
You mentioned SOPs then. For someone who's listening who's maybe not familiar with that term, could you break that down a little for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So another one of my passions, creating procedures. So if you're a process nerd like I am, it's instructions how to do anything and everything. So they can be super basic, like how to send an email through Gmail. But if you bring someone in that's always used Outlook, obviously they'll need to see how it's done in a different program, to something super complex, like how to fix an automation through API using APIs or things like that. So yes, that's an SOP.
Okay, so standard operating procedures, basically our processes and documentation on how the client likes things done and how we execute those parts of it. In our previous question there around those stages, we talked about client offboarding. Now, obviously, there's a few different scenarios, I guess, in client offboarding where we as the business owner, the VA or the OBM, have decided for whatever reason we're no longer able to service that client. And that could be because we're taking our business in a different direction. And this is something that we talk about often in the inner circle, where members will flag this is the behaviors of the client are really no longer aligned and they're not feeling aligned with that client anymore. The client may make that decision to offboard the VA because they're going in a different business direction. They're cutting back costs. They're feeling as though the VA or OBM is not the right fit. Or if it is a piece of work, a project based, and there is a agreed finish date at the start, In your experience, where are some of those sort of pitfalls or mistakes, common mistakes that VAs and OBMs may make in that offboarding, regardless of why the offboarding is occurring?
One of them would be not actually having a handover document. It's very important to have everything documented, everything in your processes, whether it be Notion, Google Docs, Word, somewhere to have everything documented. Another one would be assuming that people know everything that you know. So it's all well and good for you to, again, that's like the SOP to me are so important. I could be talking about Zapier, like just now I said SOP, but if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about or what you know, whoever you hand it over to may have to call you back and say, hey, I don't understand any of this. This SOP makes no sense to me. What does API mean? Or what does a webhook means or something like that? So you have to be really explicit with the way that you hand things back to your client. Make sure that they understand. And I always ask them as well, like, do you understand this process? Would you like me to go super in depth with this process? Who's going to take over my task, if any? And how are they going to work with you if someone else coming on board?
Yeah. And if they are engaging another VA or OBM past your time with them, that's a really great foundation that you're setting that other VA up, that incoming VA and OBM up for incredible success because you're giving them so many tools. But like you said, also sometimes our clients know that we do all this stuff, but in their head, it's just like, oh, it's just magically done. And Mariana just gets it sorted and she's waves her magic wand and that's done. But often, there's quite a lot of intricate steps, especially those of us that work in like with clients with more technical service areas, like setting up automations, like updating their website and things like that. It's just a great foundation. I also think whether they're offboarding or not, having a lot of that documentation in process is a really great, I guess, risk mitigation strategy for you as the VA and OBM who is going to get sick, is going to take time off, is going to need to take a break from your business, but also the client in terms of they can always jump in and execute any of the tasks should you not be available in the time frame that they're requiring.
Yeah, absolutely. It also, I think, keeps it transparent into what you're actually doing. So I know sometimes some clients may want to know every single thing you do, and having it documented just helps give it to them and they can have a look at either there's some processes can be cut down or if the process doesn't need to be so long or things like that as well. It's always great to document it.
Yeah. And it also gives you a great review point to make sure that those documents and processes are still working, I guess. Instead of it just happening, you can review them as part of your monthly or quarterly reviews with the client to say, this is it. Is everything in our tech stack working for us? Is there a new tech that we could be incorporating that does some of these steps that could eliminate some of that?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite things, again, being a process nerd. My quarterly reviews is just looking at all your tech stack, looking at all your tech stack means like all the apps that you use, all the software that you use, what's overlapping, what are you paying for that you're not using. For example, I used to use Later as a scheduling platform, but I don't do any scheduling for anyone apart from myself. So I'm like, I don't need to pay $200 a year. So I'm just going to use Meta Business, as painful as it is. I'm just going to use it and save myself that $200 a year that I could perhaps use for either someone else to help me out doing the scheduling or something else like professional development.
Yes, that's a great point. Our quarterly audits, subscription audits especially, are so beneficial for their business and for our clients' businesses, always savings. We talk a lot about, first impressions. Can you talk me through, I guess, and maybe from your own business, what your client onboarding process looks like, or some great client onboarding process that maybe you have been the client and you've gone through them, and what makes them stand out as really great experiences?
Absolutely. So my client onboarding is really basic. I don't like to go all out, mainly because a lot of the people that I service are people that are already quite overwhelmed. So if I overwhelm them with more information, then they start feeling, again, overwhelmed, frustrated. Perhaps they're like, oh, maybe she's a bit much, things like that. So
Great point. Yeah.
yeah, I keep my onboarding pretty simple. Somebody inquires with me and they want to sign up. We have a discovery call if they want to. If they don't want to, I just send them a quote from messages or emails they sent me. And from there, once they sign on, all they get is an email saying, this is your client portal where everything's going to be, your invoices, your proposal, the project. And in 24 hours, I'll send you an invoice and I'll send you basically how we're going to tackle this. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you don't, I will see you on the email. And then, 24 hours, I'll send them an email saying, this is your invoice. This is how we're going to tackle the project, or this is how we're going to tackle things. If you want to have a kickoff call with me, you're more than welcome to. If not, I'm happy to just start. Usually I do book the kickoff call because that's when we can do a lot of the two-factor authenticator process if I'm going into the Gmail or if I'm going into the personal accounts. So I find my one has been really simple, and because a lot of the people that come to me are already quite busy, I think they appreciate that I'm super straightforward. I'm not like, oh, maybe if you have time this time or if you have time this time. It's like, no, a lot of the time people want direction, especially if you're on OBM. People want you to hold their hands and tell them exactly what you need from them rather than vague. Maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. It's like, no, I need action right now.
Yeah, I think it's a really brilliant point you make about meeting clients where they're at. And often that is overwhelm. They're flooded, they're already drowning, they're like, I need help. And sometimes that sets us up a little bit for a difficult start. And by that, I mean, they're coming in looking for like instant gratification with their VA and OBM. So I think you made a really great point around a simplified client onboarding experience. So you can just hit the ground running and start getting some wins on the board, but also making sure that you have all the processes and agreements in place to make sure that you're covered, the client's covered, you're getting paid up front. I think you've found a really nice balance because often they are really overwhelmed and they just want someone to help them feel better straight away. But the reality is it does take time. And you mentioned things like login details and access and two-factor authentication. Like they do take time and they can be frustrating for the clients. We've all been there where SMS codes are going to some phone number of someone that helped them once set up their website and all of that stuff. It's so common. And I think it is really about striking that right balance between covering yourself, covering the client, making sure everyone's on the same page, all the invoices are done. You set those expectations from the start about how that working relationship's going to do it, but without bombarding them and making them sort of be the driver in that when they're really asking for help. I was chatting with a client the other day and he had just taken on a new part of the business and he realized that their membership onboarding form was 7 pages long. And he's just like, it's not a great onboarding experience, right? For their members, it's like, let's just get all the key information, get them signed up as a member, and then let's work out a staged onboarding approach where we then set some goals and work out what they want and get their information for the directory on our website and all of those sorts of things. And it was like this real aha moment around this is actually a bottleneck and it's actually preventing people from engaging with our business.
Yeah, 7 pages. That's a long form for whatever business it is. That is a long form.
That is a long form. But you're thinking like if someone sends you that and you're like, I've got to read all of this, I've got to sign all of this, I've got to fill in all this information before I can even get started. I think there's like a fine line, a fine balance, I should say.
Yeah, I like to always include a what's next in my proposals or in my emails, like what's happening next. Because a lot of the time, perhaps I feel like I'm communicating properly, but perhaps I'm not. So then if I have a what's next, then the client actually knows what's coming next. So my proposals, there's a what happens next? Well, you get this email and this is going to happen. And then once the first email goes out, what happens next? You'll get something else. Once the kickoff call has been booked, what happens then? Well, we'll see you at the kickoff call and make sure you have all these documents ready, or at least open them 5 minutes before the call. So at least we've got them there.
Yeah. And I think it's that really great communication from the start, letting the client know, like you're driving, you're going to hold their hand through this, especially if they've never had a VA or an OBM in their business before, and just setting those expectations, like over communicating what's happening next, because that's obviously going to prevent a lot of questions then for you from the client. It's going to take up your time around like, now what happens? Like, when's this going to be done? In your tech stack for client onboarding, what does that look like? How much of those steps that you mentioned are you doing? Are systems doing for you?
I have a lot of it automated, but it's not a robot just sending things to people. I do use AI in my business, but I have made it so that it doesn't do a lot of my talking. It just does the processes. So I use a program called Moxie, which is a client relationship manager program, and it handles pretty much everything for me. I actually other than Gmail, I don't use anything else. I used to use ClickUp as project management, but Moxie have really gone leaps and bounds in the project management. So there's a form on my website which is tied to Moxie, and that form gets filled in and it sends me a ping and says somebody has sent an enquiry, you need to get back to them, which I do through Moxie again, send them an agreement or book a call through them as well. Once the agreement is signed, my invoicing gets done through Moxie as well, and project management, client portal. So yeah, Moxie has come a long way for me to do everything, because I used to do everything through ClickUp, or I think I used Notion for like a good 2 months, but it has basically done everything for me. Offboarding as well. So yeah, all my client journey, everything I do is through them. I still use Gmail and Google Drive and Google Documents for my files. And once I have automated that part, but that's more of like back-end processes rather than client-facing thing. Once somebody signs in with me, all my back-end gets automated and things happen in the back-end, like new folders get created, new documents get created, new templates for whatever project we are working in get created. So I managed to have automated some of the things for my client journey that make it easy for me and for my clients. So if they wanted to ask me a question, I'm not scrambling, trying to find a document, trying to find this email. Everything's been consolidated really well, which I'm pretty happy with.
So if we move through to that next stage, the client's onboarding, they're feeling looked after, you're starting on the service delivery, they're paying their invoices, everything's great. Then we start getting into, I guess, the review and the feedback and the client nurturing stage of that, which is basically after onboarding and before offboarding. And that, can go for years, right? Like some of the clients I've worked with, it's 6, 7 years. What does that client nurturing stage look like? You mentioned before reviews, and one of the things you do in those reviews is like, let's look at the tech stack. Is it working? Are we making the most of what we're paying for? Can you talk us through a little bit about that kind of client nurturing phase and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It all depends on whether it's a project or if it's retainer or ongoing work. And also depends what tasks you're doing, I suppose. So for the Moxie builds that I do, sorry, it's going to sound like a Moxie ad. This podcast.
This podcast is sponsored by Moxie. Hey, they might want to sponsor our podcast. That's a great idea. Moxie, we're going to call you.
Yeah, they probably will love it, actually. Anyway, for the Moxie builds, it depends either doing a full build or a half build. And again, I have everything laid out, every milestone that I hit. I just tell them where I'm up to, especially because it's such a big investment for people that kind of want to know everything I'm doing and how I'm doing in the background. Also, if they're still using Moxie while I'm in there meddling with it, they like to know everything I'm doing. So having templated emails is very helpful for me and for my projects of where I'm at every stage. Same if I'm doing an automation project or if I'm doing an SAP project, I have everything templated, and I do put in the specific custom project details, but everything else is templated. So that makes it really helpful in the sense that then I don't have to use a lot of my time updating my clients, and I can use that time rather than doing it at me actually doing the work. So that helps a lot. If it's retainer work, I like to always ask people how they like doing things, because I'm a person that sends a lot of emails and I'm a person who hates it. So I'm always asking them, how many emails do you like to receive? Or like, do you like me to update you for every little thing? Or do you like me to send a long email at the end of the day? Do you do voice notes as well? When do you check your emails? Because I know a lot of people have very strict boundaries when it comes to checking emails. So I'm not going to send them an email at 5 p.m. on a Friday when they didn't check it for till Tuesday or something like that. So asking all these questions at the start will also help with that client nurturing, because then you're paying attention to the details, you're paying attention to how people work. You're actually making them feel like they're being looked after properly rather than just getting thrown information and processes at them.
Yeah. And again, that comes back to like meeting our clients where they're at in a way that still obviously works for us. If a client says, oh, I'd love reading emails at 10 o'clock at night, that doesn't mean you need to be there, but we can use schedule send and those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
But it's meeting the clients where they're at and working out how our clients' brains work so that we can get the best out of them, which then sets us up for success as a service provider to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also want to say, it's all great and good to ask all these questions, but also keep in mind your own boundaries.
Yes, it has to work for us as well.
Then go sending the email at 10 p.m. because that person wants to read at 10 p.m. Yeah, if both your requirements and your boundaries don't align with that client. And you'll find out pretty much even within the first meeting if
Yeah.
how things are gonna go, because that kind of sets the tone. And I think LBMs and VAs, we do tend to people please.
Mhm.
So again,
Occupational hazard.
it's all really good to have the best client journey, but also keep in mind that at the end of the day, this is your business and you need to look after yourself too.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the established VAs amongst us that are listening have all had that moment where your business gets to this certain point and you're almost like, how did I get here? This is not, it feels like
Yeah.
I definitely had those moments where I feel like everyone has access to my time and I just get what's left over, the 15 minutes here, the 30 minutes here in between where people have scheduled things. And it's like, hang on, this isn't why I wanted to build this business,
Yeah.
especially people like you that have young families at home and are managing all those different hats that you wear. It's important to understand how our clients work and how to get the best out of them, but to then put that through the filter of our own boundaries and how we want to run our businesses. I think it's a really great point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all been there saying yes to everything. And then you're like, hang on a second, I actually don't know how to do this. What am I going to do?
Yeah, or like these are not the kind of people I want to be working for. And we have to acknowledge at the start, a lot of us, I'm totally guilty of this, was like, yes to every client because I was like, I have to make this business work. I have to be able to pay for my mortgage and my life and make this a successful business. But I think sometimes it is, just tuning into that gut feel. And you've perfectly segued into my next question about identifying red flags during the client, especially they're probably the most red, they're the most bright and flying highest during the client onboarding and paying attention to those. Now, your red flags are probably going to be different from the next person and mine and the person after that. What are the types of things that you see during that onboarding process, whether it's an email inquiry, a website form submission, a discovery call, that are flags for you to think that this may not actually be the ideal client for me?
Some of the ones that not necessarily, I guess, it's not something they say, it's the way they make me feel.
Mm-hmm.
And at the start, again, you're not people pleaser, you're like yes to everything. But in the back of your mind, you're like, hang on, this is giving out, and the bat signal is like, something's not right.
Spidey
So,
senses.
yeah, it's like, maybe definitely pay attention to those. If your gut's telling you don't follow through,
Mm.
I would say definitely follow your guts because
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, it's been right. Actually, well, 10 times out of 10.
Mm.
Sometimes when they come asking, but they don't even know what they're asking sometimes.
Mhm.
So in the discovery call or in the inquiry form, they're like, somebody gave me it's not necessarily a red flag, more like a redirection. Somebody gave me your business name. I actually don't know what a VA does. What does a VA do? I need someone to do marketing. I need someone to do this. I need someone to do that. And it's like, okay, well, you kind of need 5 people for the job that you
Mhm.
need right now.
Yeah.
There are some VAs out there that are generalists and they can do all those things. That's fab. But you probably will be paying premium because that's a lot of technical work or that's marketing. So when they give you like 5 different job descriptions,
Mm.
they're all completely different. And I just need to be able to do all this, like, okay, well. And that comes to education as well, because a lot of people, again, like that person would have said, the imaginary person, I don't know. Sorry, I need a VA, but I don't know to do this. Or somebody gave me your number. I just need someone to do all this for me. That someone actually don't know what they need.
Mhm.
So that, yeah, again, that comes a lot to education and for us to tell them, well, yes, you do need a VA for perhaps this task, but for this other task, you perhaps need a digital marketing agency, or perhaps you need a marketing special VA. Or half the time, it's like you actually need an OBM and a VA, so the
Mhm.
OBM can tell the VA to do all the work.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and I think reframing that as an opportunity for education, I think one of the great things, and I talk a lot about this with clients that we're doing a matchmaking service for when we're finding them a client, often they just come and they're in overwhelm. They've heard someone speak about a VA and they think that could work in my business. The term VA is so broad, which is amazing, but it also can then be confusing to our audience because it doesn't really say what it is and what it can be, I guess, and what
Yeah.
the opportunity for the support that we can provide to our clients. And I'm sure you're the same. I've never met two VAs that have the exact same business model, that offer the same services. We're all slightly different. And that's one of the most incredible things about our industry in the VA and OBM space. But it can be a little bit confusing for clients. I think it's really great that you have identified that as an area to then provide education and information to a business owner who's struggling to help them find their way through getting support in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think the industry is just evolving so quickly that we're still trying to catch up. So I know I started as a social media VA, and at the moment I wouldn't even call myself a virtual assistant because I don't particularly do that kind of work. I'm more like I guess, a systems consultant or as operations manager. But again, we all started as VA, so it's just a matter of finding out what you like doing and telling people that that's what you do.
Yeah, and defining that really well through our marketing, through our messaging on our social media, our website, when we're meeting people in person, really nailing what that is, I guess, so that people know that is what I need or that isn't what I need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. If there's people listening that are thinking, oh my gosh, my client onboarding, my client nurturing, my client offboarding could do with some work, or they don't exist, or they do exist, but they're a bit clunky and they're not working for me. Do you have any kind of tips or advice on where they could start with any of those points in the client journey, I guess?
What I like doing, we can go super old school and just get out the butcher paper or get out a piece of paper. You can use Canva as well, kind of great tool. There's a couple of tools online like Miro or Lucid Charts. Just mapping it out, putting it out on paper. You can even voice note it to ChatGPT if you wanted to. Just put it out there. How are people finding you? What happens after the people find you and they send you a inquiry? What happens after you send them a quote? What happens after they get onboarded? How they get onboarded? What programs are you using? How many emails are you sending? What goes in the email? And even having someone to go through their onboarding with you as a test, or you yourself going through it as a test as well. So then you know what people are getting on the other side. So in one of my tests, when I first got Moxie, when people signed the proposal, they got the invoice straight away. And I was like, hang on a second, that's a bit intense. I mean, in my side of things, I'm like, that's a bit intense to get the invoice straight away, especially like I said, some of my clients will look at the proposal like 10 p.m. and then they get an invoice straight away. I'm like, that's a bit jarring. So then I changed that. So then I actually manually send the invoice, which I'm happy to do because then I can check that everything's correct. And then I can check at the time that I'm sending it, or I can schedule it for a time that I think would be appropriate for my clients. So yeah, just mapping it out on a piece of paper and writing down everything that happens.
I think, again, I feel like a broken record, but a very good point around the invoicing and you going, actually, no, that feels like it's a bit jarring. And I guess it's like another way of saying that's not on brand for you, right? Like for you to do that is not feeling like it's on brand for your business. So always, again, putting our processes through that lens of like, is that how I want my customers to feel and to experience my business, either at the start, the middle, or the end? Is that on brand for my business? How would I like to be treated if I was the ideal client? And is an invoice the second they open something, is that right? Maybe it is. And that's awesome if that's your brand and that's genuine for you. But it's also, I think, putting it through the lens of, what feels right and what feels genuine and what matches their in-person or online interactions with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, your client journey, again, you have to, like you said, it has to be on brand to your specific business. So like most client journeys are very like follow the same steps, inquiry, onboarding, project, offboarding, review. But there's all the little personal brand touches that you can really personalize things. And I know some people send some gifts at the end or some gifts at the start to make the client journey more premium.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. That speaker that I mentioned earlier in the episode that spoke about that client journey, she had just experienced something similar where she was onboarded with a new accountant. She'd just hired a new accountant and they asked her a bunch of what she thought were odd questions in the onboarding, but they actually were trying to ascertain the kind of things that she likes. And then lo and behold, this gift arrived. And she was like, oh, that makes sense. These are all these beautiful questions that they asked me, and they had purchased her a gift. And every year when it's a 1 year since they've been working, apparently they send out these nice emails and things like that. So it's like all those little touches, again, if they're on brand for you, that really can differentiate you between other service providers as well, and continue to give that really beautiful, amazing experience to your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I know I send Christmas cookies like it's
Mhm.
Christmas. So yeah, that's just the extra personal touch that I like.
Yeah, I love it. You're obviously very passionate about the client journey and are doing it very well. If people are wanting to find out more about you and what you do and chat with you about your work, where is the best place for them to find you?
Instagram, absolutely. I'm there, Potion VS. I'm also on Threads. I do a
Mhm.
lot of yapping about on Threads at Potion VS again. And on LinkedIn as well. That's not my proper name, Mariana Gaona Lopez. So you can find me there. And yeah, in the inner circle as well. I'm there. I'm chronically online, so you'll definitely get a reply from me pretty soon. So
Yes.
if anyone wants to chat up about the client journey, have any questions, if they use Moxie and then want me to have a look at it as well, I'm the official Moxie implementer. So yep, I'm happy to help.
Amazing. And we're so very, very lucky to have you back in the inner circle. You came back into our world recently. And yeah, we definitely love having you part of the community. I'll make sure we've got all of those links in the episode description so people can connect with you, especially around Moxie. I think that's such an amazing niche that you have, and have really built a very strong reputation for yourself around being the absolute go-to for all things Moxie.
Oh, why? Thank you. Yes, it's a great app, and yeah, I'm so happy that I found it because I could not do Dexano. So yeah, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Perfect way to end. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode. Always appreciate chatting with you and your time. And we will chat again soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Seed to Success. Make sure you are subscribing so you never miss an episode. If you know a VA or OBM who might benefit from this conversation, be sure to share it with them. Let's chat again soon.